If you didn't have a chance to tune in earlier, I'd like to reintroduce myself. I'm Tennille Jones, President and CEO of Base 11. And at this time, I have the honor of hearing from a technology leader and engineer who is helping to bring the future into focus, Aurore Lariven. She's here with us today and building a successful career in tech at one of Base 11's incredible partners, Amazon. Thank you for joining us, Aurore.
Thank you.
We are so grateful, I'll just say, to start to have Amazon's commitment, of course, in creating opportunities for STEM for all. And of course, I'm excited to have you here. So, to kick us off, I'd love for you just to spend a minute or two. And I know that we've had some conversation offline, but to let everyone know what your role is at Amazon and how did you first get into engineering, I guess I would say.
I joined Amazon a couple of months ago as a senior system engineer. I've been in the technology field for the past 20 years.
Mm.
I originally come from France, where I got an engineering degree, which was fairly generic in its content. Back at the time, computer science were just coming online, and my, the priority of the university I was in was to really bring women into the world of engineering. So it was a only women engineering school, which was a 5-year cursus. So we focus on getting our math and physics really dialed down, and then the last 2 years was more geared towards different type of field. I took the telecommunication and computer science kind of path, and that led me to start just at a time where embedded devices were kind of becoming more of a commodity, and I started working on a protocol stack in the phone industry. I started in Nortel in the UK and then moved to San Diego, where I worked for many small startups, all in the phone field. And basically, at the time, the field of phone or cell phones were very small. Everybody had their own embedded software stack, very custom to different use cases. And when the iPhone and Android came along, that really brought a lot of breadth to what you could do with this type of devices. And that also led me to work on a very interesting prototype, specifically with Android being an open source stack. And we were back in 2010 working on a dual screen cell phone, which unfortunately never saw the light of the day, but was very interesting to push the boundaries of software stack, to support several screens and start becoming a lot more user focused, with many new features coming with all of the Android release at the time. And then with the whole market really becoming more and more complex, my background kind of carried me towards more of tablets and smartphones, which then led me to Intel, which I joined and for 7 years before Amazon.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's an interesting trajectory. I will say, as a woman engineer as well, I almost wish you hadn't shared the information about the dual screens because now I'm going to perpetually be wondering what a dual screen cell phone looks like and wanting one. But on the topic, I'll say of women engineers, you mentioned that the school you went to was just for women engineers, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. It was actually it was started in the late 50s. Late 50s after the Second World War in France, specifically with a focus of bringing more women in engineering, because it was less than 5% of the engineering population being women, and there was definitely a stigma towards women going into this type of professions, and that was very early in bringing equality between men and women in this type of working environment. At my time, when I joined in 91 and left in 96, it was only women. 94 was the last year where they decided to bring men. So between early 50s up to the mid 90s, it was only for women. And that, I think, brought a lot of confidence in showing that women could also work in engineering without any problem.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure that that was empowering. I mean, I know some people are like, well,
Yeah.
you have women over here and men over there, but when you know that there are gaps in the field, which is basically what Base 11 talks about, that's really empowering to say, here's an issue and here's how we're going to come together. And to your point, instill that confidence so we can get there. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I don't know that I've actually heard of that model from an engineering school or university perspective in the US. So, relative to Amazon, I just want to bring it back there for a moment. I know that Amazon is a huge company. And I presume within Amazon, you can obviously take multiple paths. So, can you tell us maybe about your path within Amazon, your specific function, and maybe about what you just love about it?
As I mentioned when we talked before this recording, I was more poked by Amazon than I was actually looking for a job, just because of the market condition in the past year and a half or so. I was not really looking for a job, but the interesting aspect of what Amazon was bringing in the job description was, again, something which was more closer to my heart, which is working on products which you can really see it on the shelves, quote unquote. And most of my career being in cell phones and real product, really, I wanted to get back to that field, a field where you can really, you have really the product life cycle, which can go from requirements, and you can see something at the end of the tunnel, because it's a long process, and I do like to see this progression. So Amazon was basically advertising for a senior system engineer in Primaire, which is where the whole drone activity is taking place. And by talking to the lead hiring manager, I felt that my background was actually compelling to bring a very broad skill set, coming from my 20 years of activity in the embedded world. So I was very happy to join the team. Also, when I was very young, my father had a plane, so I learned to basically drive a plane. When I was 14, I didn't really do much more afterwards, because life carries you in other direction. But
Yeah.
I do also enjoy the fact that it's in the aerospace arena. And I was also in the Pacific Northwest at the time. I was in Portland, and Seattle not being so far away. All of that combined gave me a really a compelling answer to move away from my previous job and join Amazon in their operational group.
Nice. Well, I'm glad that you and to your point, some of our conversation, right, pre this interview, I'm glad that you actually are able to work in a space where you can see the product now, because I know that there are often times, especially even within aerospace, but I presume engineers in all fields, where you're working on a product and you're designing and the software, and you don't actually get to see the end product, especially when we're talking about systems integration. So
Right.
you did bring up, right? Exactly. You know that well as a
Mhm.
systems engineer. So you did bring up that you flew this plane and your father had a plane, and you also brought up your kind of your trajectory at Amazon, which I know you started as an engineer, and Amazon also kind of I'll say, poked you in terms of, hey, we're interested in coming forth. I presume, though, because you didn't start at Amazon and you have a long history or journey of experience in engineering, that you hit some bumps along the road. So I'd love to know maybe what you see as some of the challenges that you've incurred and tell a couple stories about that and maybe even how you've mitigated those.
Sure. I think the primary there are a couple of kind of recurrent issues or kind of I don't know if you call it issues, but yeah, bump if you want in the road. Is first of all, from most of my career, I've been the only woman as part of the team, so that really also bring some sort of you feel. You feel always a little bit, out of the conversation. So there is definitely a little bit more of, proving your you can perform and you can actually do the work. And most of the time it leads to kind of overwork just to prove that
Yeah.
you can do the work. So there has been some challenge in work-life balance just with that, that inherent, need to really prove and overprove and that
Yes.
you can do the job. And I think the other thing is also you reach a certain level, and I think when you start reaching a level of senior, director level, and to go to the next step where the funnel, if you really want to have a career somewhere, become really difficult because specifically, talking about myself, focusing on, performing and really looking at, just delivering things on the execution side, really kind of narrow your field of view. And sometimes you miss, to really start, networking, connecting with other team, the greater, surrounding, and then really building your network of connection, which will allow you to reach that next level. It's all fine when you are on the technical path to a certain level, because it's all 95% of what you deliver on a yearly basis. When it comes to anything above, director, even on a technical path, you do need support, you need sponsors, you need people who can advocate for you in order to get to the next level. And that was something I've been blindsided just because I thought, my work would speak for itself, and it's not the case. It is to a point, but if you really want to go to a like the director to VP level, there is way more element outside of what you do, which counts in getting up the ladder.
Yeah. I understand that, and I appreciate you sharing first about the bump being what you see and experience, and I can relate as a woman engineer and around gender parity, if you will, right? And we've talked about gender equality before, so I'm really hoping that that changes in the future and that we
Mhm.
can continue to make those changes. I love the idea, though, that you brought up around, and this is good for folks online to kind of know you have a technical space that you can be in. And you know this, I'm sure, Aurora, where you can escalate as an engineer along this technical path and become a tech fellow, if you will, or an associate tech fellow. But when you go onto this other path that has some kind of management, relative kind of management aspects, to your point, you have to make sure that you are networking, connecting, having some of those softer skills that take you just out of the technical aspect, because people at that level, they still need technical support from their team, but they have to navigate in so many other areas that we don't see.
Yeah,
So
right.
I'll say relative to that, this is great information for our next generation. So as we talk about our next generation, right, at Next Frontier Conference, we're all about the future. The future is within focus. What do you see as the next discovery? What do you see as being innovative, that's coming along, coming down the pike? And what do you see as motivating you in this space?
So obviously, when you work long enough, I think you start seeing a trend, and there is definitely the past, let's say since 2015, um, the whole AI. I think
Mhm.
the the machine learning and the AI element coming into play in developing software or and developing product systems is becoming really the main element in anything. Whatever you buy, which has a little bit of software, is likely to collect data and apply some AI algorithm on it to basically either monetize what this data means, but also help many other science team to basically understand better things. And there is a pro and cons. When I say understanding better things, it's maybe understanding better, certain species and understanding better our, climate. And there is a lot of, good things in gathering, big data and making sense of them. At the same time, yeah, it can be, bringing more biases in how we look at data. So for me, data is really gold. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to be more and more the currency in software. My career eventually, came to really work on elements which are connected to data collection, are connected to using machine learning and enabling more and more AI algorithm to, yeah. And if you look at the automotive and aero industry, it's all, kind of geared towards more of an autonomous type of vehicle being developed in the future. So data, autonomy in, kind of manipulating and having, new devices really having their life of their own, living their own life and
Right.
making decisions for you. So yeah, I don't know what that means, but it's definitely the the trend we are on.
Yes, we shall see. And to your point, AI is kind of, and data for that matter, is involved in everything we do. And so I know you didn't explicitly say it, but you can see too how we have multidisciplinary approaches and areas because there's these underlying technologies that are kind of emergent now.
Right.
So I think I find it fascinating. I really wanted to hear your answer, and you're dropping gems because you've seen innovation, right, over the years and decades, if you will. I'm curious if you look back to when maybe you first started, because we have a lot of students and early career adults on the line today. So if you look back to when you first started and say, think back to that time. What is something that you wish you knew back then? Or what is something maybe that you learned back then that has really served you well throughout your career?
I Yeah, I will take the second one. I think what served myself what what really served myself is really, follow my heart in what I like to do. I never had really a very strong plan in, I'm going to do that and that will lead me to a very specific. I just felt, I really, yeah, listened to my heart, what I really was passionate about, and just followed, followed that type of career. And I feel, where I am now after, 20 years of experience, all of the bits and pieces I've done in different projects, different setup, environment, all of that is kind of coming together. And you feel that actually, even if the plot was not, something, I purposely decided to do, I feel that if you do things you like, you acquire, knowledge which eventually is, serve yourself and others in different conditions. So I'm kind of more of the person is, if you do what you like to do, it's always going to be, positive.
That's right. That's right. Well, I actually was going to ask you about what advice you would give to people of all ages that are trying to get into a career in tech or engineering, but I feel like you answered it. I mean, doing what you like, doing what you love, having a passion around it, and all the pieces kind of coming together. So I would say that continuum of always learning. Anything else, Aurora, before we close out? Because I so appreciate you being here with us today. Anything else that you would want to share in terms of advice?
Really, I think make sure you take some time to look up and really acknowledge, people in your team. Make sure that there is, part of what you dedicate to your work, which is for your team and a greater, surrounding. Because over time, all of what you give and kind of communicate um, just comes back to you, and that's your lever to kind of move forward in your career and really help out in everything you do. So that's, I think, the most important thing is really it's a teamwork.
Yes, yes. The success is nothing without your team, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was amazing. I love that we ended on that note. We always say teamwork makes the dream work. So I appreciate you being here today, Aurora. I really do. And I also want to thank Amazon for their continued partnership and support of Base 11. And I'll just say that we are so grateful for the incredible work of leaders like you. And I just appreciate you. And I hope that you all enjoyed this conversation.